Hello. In this video I'm going to talk about the wax that I'm going to provide with OEM housings, the drilled housings, which have a looser clearance. They have more of a space between the insert and the outer rim of that housing. This wax is a 90% beeswax, 10% essential oil of lemon mixture. So it's that essential oil adds a little bit of pliance to the wax, and it kind of makes it a little bit more like a putty. And I was going to show you how to just easily take some of this wax and basically more firmly hold your insert into the housing. And I'll also show you how to wax your screw in a way that really firms up the threads but doesn't provide any danger to the screw getting stuck. So first we'll work on this. So I've just taken a chunk of the wax and I'm rolling it in my fingers, and I'm kind of making like a long snake out of it as I go, and getting it soft. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the head of that snake and just kind of work it onto the outside of this bowl, and I'm kind of just smearing it along the outside. The gap isn't huge around the outside of the bowl. I'd say it's probably about 0.1 millimeters. So this wax will help to fill in that gap and kind of give more of a firm hold on the outside of the bowl. And just try to keep the wax on the outer rim, not on top. It's not really going to hurt anything. You just probably don't really want it mixing with your lubrication when you lube your bowl eventually. So now I've just kind of coated the outside of the bowl with that wax, and I'm going to take a little bit of the wax and I'm just going to actually put just a teeny tiny dab of it right on top of that central peg on the lower module housing, and I'm just going to smoosh it onto it. And once the bowl goes on there, a lot of it's going to smash into that hole in the bottom of the insert, and a lot of it's going to fill in this chamfer that's on the bottom there as well. Some of it may spread out underneath, so we want to kind of just make sure that there's just a very minimal amount of wax there. We don't want a huge amount. We don't want anything raising our bowl up at all, but just enough to make that peg sticky. And I believe that should be good enough. And so basically you just want to take and usually I'm using my fingers in the video, but you probably want to use like a piece of cloth and just put the cloth between your finger and the bowl insert. And I'm just gonna gently push the insert through there. It's not all the way in now, but once it's in here, I'm going to shove the insert down to the bottom of the housing. I've got a little bit of wax on there. I'm just going to wipe it off real quick. And then I can see a little bit of excess wax coming off the sides. I'm just going to take something and just grab that off. I'm using a hex key that goes with the V3 sticks, but you can use anything. I mean, whatever you got laying around. And it's as if the bowl is glued in now, but it's not glued in. It's just kind of, it's affixed in a more firm way, but you can still change out your insert. You can do different things like that, but just make sure see there's a little bit of wax still there. Just make sure you get that off. It's probably not going to hurt anything. It's just I don't know, I just don't want to mix in with that silicone grease. It probably wouldn't hurt anything. What's great about this wax is that it's non-toxic and you can mess around with it with your fingers. You don't have to worry about chemicals getting into your body. It's just non-toxic, all organic ingredients. And now I can do this and this bowl is not going to come out. And now there's just more, there's less play between the housing and the insert. So that's kind of a more of a, it's kind of like a quote-unquote natural approach to gluing your bowl in. There's no toxic fumes to speak of, and you can affix your bowl in a more sturdy way that way. And the second thing we're going to do is we are going to wax this screw that's inside of here. So I'm just going to go ahead and take it all the way out. But you don't have to. You could actually just put some wax on the end and then retract it back in. But just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm just going to take it out. And I'm going to take a little bit of this wax. And I'm just going to actually just squeeze it on there with my fingers. And roll the screw around with my fingers. Like that. And now you can see there's a whole bunch of wax there. I'm going to take some of that off. But I'm leaving some of it on, kind of like almost an excessive amount, because what's going to happen is when I screw the screw back into the joystick, some of it's going to, sorry, I lost focus. There we go. Some of it's going to start spiraling out. It's going to, not all of it's going to go into the threads because obviously there's too much. But I'm backing it out, and you can see some of the wax is being cut by the screw or the joystick, and it's going out. Okay, I'm gonna take some of that off temporarily, and I'm pulling it in. This actually is sufficient without, I mean, you don't have to do anything else. Like this does tighten up the threads. I'm going to put a little bit of this wax in this hole. You might think, why the heck is he doing that? Well, and I'm actually going to push it in there. It's really just enough to like fill in that nib hole is all you need. So now I'm taking this. This is actually a butane soldering iron, but it's made by what is it? Benzomatic. I have a couple of these and I really like them. I use them for heat shrink. If you take the soldering iron tip off, it actually acts as a let's see if I can, I'm trying to do it without. There, you see that? Sorry, got my camera hot. You can see that that orange glow inside there. That is basically just sending out infrared rays to the through the end, and it's acting like a heat gun. And what I'm doing, I'm trying to do this without. Let me zoom in a little bit. I don't know if it'll achieve focus like this. Here, I'll do it. Instead, I will bring the camera closer. There we go. You can see the wax is in that hole. And I'm just applying heat. You could use a traditional heat gun. That would probably work. And now you see the wax is melting. And what I want is for the wax to start falling down into the threads. It'll start absorbing down into the threads. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of heating the whole sphere of the joystick. And I'm not heating it a lot. I'm just getting it warm enough that the wax melts. I'm not affecting the, not trying to affect the stick too much. But now, okay, you just saw a bubble pop. A whole bunch of that wax went down inside the joystick. I'm going to turn off my heat. I don't need it anymore. There we go. And let this cool so that it's cool to the touch. I can tell it's hot still because the wax is molten. So I'm just letting it cool down a little bit. Yep, still hot. I'm touching my screwdriver to it to cool it down a little bit, actually. Yeah, do this. I'll absorb some of that heat by just touching the screw inside and kind of giving it a thermal bridge so that it'll absorb some of that heat. And what's happening is that molten wax inside is solidifying, and now I didn't remove any wax, but you can see maybe that all the wax that I shoved into that hole is now gone. It's actually just inside the joystick. So what if I'm going to pause this and let this cool all the way. Once it cools all the way, there will be significantly more resistance on that screw than if I had just put wax on the screw and backed it into the joystick. I'll bring the video back in a few minutes after it cools. Okay, and it took about a minute for that to cool. Not too long at all. And you can see there's a little bit of excess wax on the end of the joystick. I'm just going to wipe that off. You can wipe it off with I would recommend wiping it off with a tissue or paper towel or something like that. I'm using my fingernail right now, but if I was to actually install this in a joystick, I would more thoroughly clean it off. But I'm going to show you the difference in the resistance of this waxed screw and this one, which has not been waxed. That one has an internal screw which has no wax on it. So I am barely I'm not using any force to turn this, and it's naturally it's coming out the end now. You can see that. Okay. Now the waxed screw that I melted the wax into the joystick. Sorry, I lost a little focus there. There we go. Okay. Now I'm using the same amount of force. I can't turn it. But if I want to turn it, I just give it a little more force. And it is turning. Sorry. There we go. I'll turn it now. See, it does turn, and it's kind of more of a pleasant amount of resistance, and that kind of allows you to fine-tune your joystick a little better. If it doesn't have any wax on it, sometimes you have a tendency maybe to over-adjust the screw. But yeah, let's see. Let's bring it out a little bit more. And it's coming out, but you don't see a bunch of wax on the end of it. All that wax went into the threads inside, and it went to in between the thread interface between the screw and the joystick. So I'm just retracting it back in, and that resistance remains. So I'm going to try to turn it with the amount of force that I was turning it with before, and I just can't turn it with that light amount of force like I was using here, where I was just barely touching my fingers. See, I'm just barely touching my fingers to the joystick. This waxed one, I'm doing the same amount of force and it doesn't want to turn. So that's a good sign that this wax really helps to reduce the swiveling action that may or may not happen with an unwaxed screw. The dimensions of the threads varies because these joysticks have been they've been electro-polished, and that can remove a tiny amount of material, which can make the threads a little bit more loose. Okay, last thing with the wax. So any screw can be firmed up with this wax. So I'm going to take another little bit of this ball of wax, and just a tiny bit on the end of my finger, and you can use it just like you would use purple Loctite. Purple Loctite works fine on the caps. There's no danger of a screw getting stuck because of purple Loctite. Purple Loctite is a very light type of material that helps to lock threads, but it allows them to be removed with tools. But if you don't want to use purple Loctite, you can use this wax as well on your cap screw. And what will happen is when I screw this cap in, some of the wax will actually get stuck underneath the cap, which is good because the wax is kind of sticky, and it has a tendency to prevent the prevents the cap from wanting to turn. Even if the screw was loose, the cap doesn't want to turn because of the extra friction between the cap and the stick. So there you can see some of the wax is coming out, and I'll just clean that off with my fingernail and remove it. And it forms a nice extra layer of friction. And see, now I've got wax all over my stick. Just before you use it and reinstall it into your joystick, just take a cloth and wipe it off really well. But I'm going to tighten that down like so, and the amount of force it takes for me to undo this is quite a lot. So it actually increases the amount of force that it takes to get your cap screw off, but it doesn't prevent you from removing your cap when you actually want to. It helps keep it on while you're playing. So this wax can be used also, you could potentially use it for the put it on your OEM screws in your controller shell. It might help to tighten your threads there and prevent anything from loosening or maybe potentially creaking. I don't know about that, but you could experiment with it there. I don't see any harm in using it there. But it really works well with the bowl and the OEM housing. I don't think you need to use the wax for the resin dowel housings. It also works great for your screws in your joystick, whether they be the internal screw or the cap screw. So thanks for watching, and I hope this video was informative, and I hope this wax helps you. Oh, and if you want to make it at home, you don't have to buy it from the Dow's website. You can just take any amount of beeswax and mix it with a 10% mixture of some kind of essential oil. I chose lemon because lemon's cheap and it smells good. So yeah, there you go. I just had another idea about the wax. It makes your fingers sticky. So it might be, I mean, I don't know what it would do to these caps or to any cap in general, but if you put a tiny amount on your skin, on your thumb, I feel like it might enhance the grip on your thumb. See, look at my fingers when I do that. I can put my fingers together here and they don't stick together, but there's like a little bit of extra stickiness. But it's not stickiness like sugar, it's an oily stickiness like with the wax, which kind of goes along with the natural oiliness of skin anyway. So that might be something interesting to try when you're playing. I don't know if you want to try to use this as a grip enhancement, but that's maybe some other way that you can use this that's experimental. Anyway. Thank you for everything. Without you, this project would be absolutely nothing. In a certain sense, this feels very much like a dream because all of this is very, very interesting, and who would have ever thought it was possible? Relax. You're dreaming.